everybody, Mrs. Alcorn here. Hello. I hope everyone's doing well. Welcome to your first Science Foundation videos. This video is about the nature of science and we'll also quickly go through some aspects of experimental design. That's me in Ecuador pinning caterpillars. Very fun. By the end of this activity, you will be able to explain the basic principles of the nature of science and identify the basic processes involved with experimental design. Well, what the heck is the nature of science? You'll find out. What standards are we connecting to? Now, in this course, we use the College Board AP Environmental Standards. These include content standards, which are things you need to know about, different concepts, different, like, for lack of a better word, facts you need to know. And there's also science practices. These are science skills that are really important to have. And the two that we will be addressing today are scientific experiments and also data analysis. Two very important things that will help you not only in AP Environmental or CP Environmental, but also in your life. It's really important to be able to analyze data and understand what data is telling you. So what is the nature of science? It's basically talking about science as an epistemology, as a way of knowing about the world. Epistemology is a philosophical definition, and it's about, oh, here's my kitty. You see her, this is Curie, she's my co-teacher. Epistemologies are ways of thinking about knowledge, and the nature of science is essentially what is science on a sort of a philosophical level. So back when I was in school, I learned about science very much, I think I need to hide this, very much like the back of a ramen, like number one, ask a question, number two, have a hypothesis. But science doesn't really happen in this step-by-step linear fashion. It's too simple. And if anything, if we've learned anything from the COVID-19 pandemic, it's that science isn't simple. It's very complicated. So science is iterative. So have you ever played the scribble game where you close your eyes? All right, hopefully we don't need this mail. Make a scribble, and then you have to make a picture out of it. That is what the scientific process is more like. It comes back, you keep revisiting the same question over and over as you get new information, and sometimes you have to modify that question. Now, sometimes you start at the end, find something out, and then you have to go back to the beginning. So it's all about testing ideas like this image, and here's my cat helping me teach. Testing ideas, getting feedback from your peers and modifying these ideas, finding what some benefits are, what some outcomes are, exploring. So with COVID-19, early in the pandemic, back in March, people had no idea how it was spreading, or back in February, but a couple common things that the super spreader events like the Biogen meeting and the choir practice in Washington had in common was that they were indoors and there was no social distancing. So that is what led the recommendations to limit gatherings to only a small amount of people, to also socially distance, which I am not doing with my cat right now. So what are the basic principles of the nature of science? Well, scientific investigations use a variety of methods, okay? There's a lot of different ways to approach experiments, and what a scientist might use doing a nuclear test, for instance, for a power plant is going to be very different than what a forester uses to study the change in forest composition in New England, obviously, right? Scientific knowledge is based on empirical evidence. What does empirical mean? Well, empirical, that means that everything you read in a textbook comes from an experiment, from a scientific study. There is data supporting everything you read in a textbook. Now, everybody knows that the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. We don't know this because someone hiked up Cell Mountain to the summit and found in a rock the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. No, we know that it's the powerhouse of the cell because cell biologists did many experiments and were able to trace back the ATP production to the mitochondria. Scientific knowledge is open to revision in the light of new evidence. Again, this is happening with COVID-19. As new things are found out, we're going back, maybe modifying recommendations sometimes, and maybe not. Scientific models, laws, mechanisms, and theories explain natural phenomena. All right. I think it's fun to think about my horoscope and to think about the ghosts in my old 260-year-old house, but that's not science. That is not a natural phenomena. Science is a way of knowing. We covered that. It assumes an order in natural systems. Okay. Science is a human endeavor, and therefore humans are doing the measurements. We're only as good as the instruments that we use. We're only as good as our senses can perceive things. And that is an important limitation to understand when doing experiments. Science addresses questions about the natural and physical world. Again, ghosts, fun to think about on Halloween, but not really science. Okay. Here are some aspects of experimental design. So this is an important part of our class. We're going to be designing experiments. It might be a little bit different than what you had in bio or chemistry, because in this course, we're doing things outdoors and we can't just like pour an acid on a tree, okay? So sometimes we do more natural history studies, which are less, which that we don't do as many treatments to. We might look at our control group might be a similar patch of forest and not just something we haven't done treatment on, okay? But all of these aspects you've learned about, they don't always happen in order. So Alexander Fleming, for instance, who's the guy that discovered penicillin, which is one of the greatest discoveries of the 20th century because of all of the lives it saved, especially during World War II, when soldiers had a lot of wounds, including both of my grandfathers were in World War II and both suffered injuries. My fuffa, my father's father, Swedish, his whole stomach blew open because his tank destroyer was bombed. And they basically stitched him up, gave him some penicillin, sent him right back out. And penicillin was discovered by accident because Alexander Fleming was messy, very messy desk, which doesn't sound like me at all. Just kidding. I have a very messy desk, which you will find out. And he had some mold growing on one of his petri dishes from a piece of bread from a sandwich, which kind of is gross, let's face it. And he noticed that around the mold on the bacteria, the bacterial plate, there was a zone of inhibition where bacteria didn't grow. And he said, I wonder what's going on. Turned out that this mold penicillium, had an antibiotic in it, and that's penicillin, which you may have had. So this process, it isn't always like this. Sometimes you reflect and you're like, oh, we got to go back over here. Or you find something out and then you have to go backwards. All right. And that is all I'm going to do for now because I can ramble on forever. See you in class.